Well, let me go ahead and get started then. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining the session. So today I'm going to be talking about helpful and crowdsourcing innovation, and it's something that I'm very proud to be a part of, and something that I'm honored to help grow, and very excited to talk about it with you guys. So let me go ahead and share my screen. 1 second, just making sure that everybody can see my screen. If you can't see my screen, let me know. Otherwise, silence will be a yes that you can see what I'm presenting here. So I have some slides that I'm going to go through. Essentially what Helpful is, it's an organization that is a crowdsourcing organization focused on engineering that tackles sustainability challenges around the world. And really quickly on the background of Helpful. So we're a very young organization. We actually started just over a year ago in March of 2020. That was, as you guys remember, a little thing called COVID started kind of nagging at us at that time. And basically, that was when we got the first incarnation of things where hospitals didn't have supplies, and there were shortages in the supply chain, and basically the numbers of infections were going up, and basically supply chains and various other equipment and things were kind of breaking down in terms of getting them to the right people at the right times. So there was a community that formed around the pandemic to address some of these shortages that we were seeing through engineering and technology. And so some folks got together, they created rapid designs around even basic materials such as stamped face shields and various other things that were released into the market early on. We got some great momentum, got featured in prominent news channels like the New York Times. And within slightly over a month, we grew the community to over 18,000 people around the world, who were scientists, technologists, engineers, doctors, and other experts who came in and said, hey, how can I use my expertise to really help what's happening and alleviate some of these problems through things like alternative designs and new innovation, and get those out to the population in general as quickly as possible. And that model worked, and a lot of things came out of that, a lot of designs, as I mentioned, for PPE, a lot of basic equipment that was released to the world. Some folks downloaded designs, some of them were 3D printable, and things were deployed in the millions based on both actual supplies and equipment, as well as things that, as I mentioned, that people could 3D print. And so we looked at the model and we said, you know what, this is a model that works. We basically take the power of collaboration from around the world and get them to focus on solving critical problems, whether it's in a crisis mode or otherwise. And how can we now use this model that worked in the beginning and scale it up to something that is sustainable going forward? And obviously beyond the COVID crisis, hopefully, at that time we were looking at it and saying, well, hopefully this will pass fairly soon. But how can we now use the same model for other challenges around the world that we can address via this crowdsourced model? And so now, fast forward a little bit, Helpful is now scaling to create and deploy sustainable solutions across a variety of verticals. So medical has been one of the traditional areas that we've been focusing on, but also looking at things like manufacturing in general, energy, environment, logistics, pretty much any vertical that can benefit from enhanced engineering solutions, and really leveraging this collaborative sustained model to produce results across those industry, focusing on sustainability issues and challenges around the world. So from that, our mission and vision is as follows. We're a nonprofit organization, and really we want to harness the power of the collective talent and expertise around the world to collectively engineer rapid and open solutions to sustainability challenges. And a couple of keywords here. One is rapid and open. Rapid being, we want to be able to deploy in crisis as well as steady state solutions that are applicable in the immediate term. And open, we're an open community. We focus on open engineering solutions as opposed to closed source IP. And that's important, and I'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation, but really making sure that we make things as accessible as possible as part of the community. Our vision is really taking the concept of collaboration beyond just human collaboration, but also looking at collaboration around data transfer, training, resources, opportunities to really foster, break down barriers to innovation and use that to increase prosperity around the world. So it's a fairly monumental task and vision, and we hope we get there, and we're moving in that direction. But that's really what the organization is focused on and it's about. Why now? So why did Helpful form, and why is this picking up steam? Well, the first thing is COVID, as we're all aware, broke down many of the steady state systems that existed today, especially around things like supply chain. And when the crisis hit, what started happening was certain channels became overloaded, certain channels became not utilized properly. There were various different scattered silos trying to address the needs. There's no tight coordinated network. And so things became slow in terms of being rolled out, in terms of having solutions that were formed. So we really needed some coordinated effort globally, in this particular case, that allowed for tight coordination to get things to where they need to go, but also allowing for faster speed of innovation and deployment. So having the need for a broad innovation community to quickly mobilize was something that became starkly apparent. The second one is, over the last several years especially, societal goods, sustainability, environmental, social and governance, ESG initiatives have really started kind of creeping into the mindset in a good way for organizations. They started looking at, well, how do we make things that actually are good for the environment, good for the planet, good for humanity in general. So everybody has, many organizations have started to wake up about having social impact goals as part of their mission, as part of what they want to do in their organization. And there's also been an increased movement away from innovation happening in entities such as large corporations, for example, that really serve their own interests. So having a more distributed, open community that creates and deploys innovation. And you need scale to be able to do that. And kind of where we have been sitting in a kind of global ecosystem, we're well positioned to become that non-aligned, large at scale sustainability and innovation hub. And that really drives innovation and reduces systemic risk and frictions in the market. So how do we work? So we're a nonprofit, as I mentioned, and basically we go from the vertical integration of ideas all the way through help with deployment of those ideas. So within the Helpful community, we bring a lot of contributors, again, from around the world who are experts, and they join or start various different projects, which we call kind of the primordial super projects. And some of those projects become more defined, more gelled, and they become promising projects with the help of our processes, structured, shared resources, and frameworks that we create within the organization. We shepherd those projects along. Now, once those projects have a reference, pretty much design or state to them, we apply an open source license to those, and the project teams can then take those and externally implement them. But then if they decide to stay in our ecosystem, then we help them with go-to-market capabilities. So for example, joint ventures, looking at partnerships for manufacturing, vetting, regulatory, quality assurance, packaging for actual deployment. These are elements that are important when you actually go out into the real world with reference designs. And so we want to make sure we marry both parts, the community as well as support downstream, so that those projects can then be realized, whether in a commercial fashion or in a deployment scenario for various needs around the world. This is how our ecosystem works, and that vertical integration is what makes the system important in terms of how we function compared to others out there. So in terms of the innovation pipeline, basically, an idea comes to the community, whether it's a defined idea or an innovator coming in with an idea, and then the community offers a lot of support around developing that idea. So where ideas often falter in the early stages, they don't have access to the appropriate resources to be able to understand whether the ideas are viable, to find people to help working on the idea, to find what's been done before. And so a lot of things falter in that early stage. what we offer is, through the community, is access to all of these different pieces. So for example, a new concept comes in, the teams working on it can see, okay, is there anything that's been done previously, and leverage that, find collaboration, expertise for peer review, find target customers to validate, find manufacturing partners. All of that can happen rapidly within the community to be able to validate the idea and iterate on it very quickly. And then afterwards, the idea, as I mentioned, goes to licensing, and then within the go-to-market capacity, entities can then start to gel those ideas much more toward a deployable scenario. So if we look at the current sustainability landscape, what we're offering in our vertical integration from idea stage through deployment is a bit unique out there. There's a lot of entities focused on innovation, but all of them have various different limitations across this vertical pipeline. So some are, for example, early stage focused, like hackathons, but then they offer very little support downstream, and so ideas often get lost. Others focus on the other side of things, such as more the incubators and funds, but they lose a lot of the early stage ideation. So, 90% of ideas never get developed. Those that do obviously go through that end stage process, but you want to be able to capture a lot of ideas that become viable downstream as well. So, and some entities, have very bureaucratic structures, which kind of limit some of the innovation that happens from there. So what we're trying to do by having kind of this, if you will, chain, is really address all of these points that create problems and inefficiencies in how sustainable innovation is done today. So, with Helpful, we do idea stage plus the active support framework, as I mentioned, plus the support on the go-to-market side. In terms of some of the systemic frictions and risks that we're looking to reduce, we see several main areas of where those risks come from. The first one is the closed source IP. So as I mentioned, we're an open community, and closed source IP obviously benefits the IP holder, but then it creates complications around licensing. It creates complications around iterative designs. What we want to do with open engineering is really allow for the rapid iteration of ideas and getting out to market very quickly. Now, that doesn't mean that everything needs to be free that gets deployed. It means that the initial concepts are open, and then there's various other channels for people to build on top of them in proprietary ways or in specific instance ways that they can capitalize on. So having that initial state be open really allows for generation of a lot of different ideas and gelling them very quickly. Limited ecosystem. So, as I mentioned, a lot of things have been done in silos. So whether in small communities or very specific focuses, which, in innovation's case, the bigger the scale, the better, in the sense of access to resources, access to expertise, access to various different shared structures. And so by trying to create this global community, we really try to kind of pinpoint and match these networks more effectively than what oftentimes exists today. Lack of support around innovation. Again, as we talked about previously, having the framework around all the different pieces of the value chain that allow ideas to kind of flow. And then the final point being around sustainability, that oftentimes sustainability, if we look at from an investment perspective, the market is really at its infancy. Many look at this as, well, it's not as profitable to focus on sustainability initiatives. We're trying to break those down in the sense of saying that development is not really commercially market focused. It's really about deployment and doing societal good, but monetization is certainly on the table for those entities that are working with us on it. And again, as more ESG and sustainability initiatives kind of are on the minds and agendas of organizations, the more there are models that allow sustainability to be viable from a development perspective. So putting all these things together, what we feel is our value proposition that's unique to us is we de-risk and expand innovation out there through the mechanisms I mentioned, through the ecosystem size and its scalability and its vertical integration. And what that allows us to achieve is a higher combination of breadth of problem sourcing, a higher delivery of speed for development of solutions around those problems, and the ability to commercialize or realize or deploy those particular solutions. And we want to become the organization through these channels that more effectively does this than any other organization globally. We're still working toward that goal, but that is kind of what we're driving to through this combination of things that we're putting together as part of this process. So where we've had current areas of traction. So in slightly over a year that we've been in existence, we've led the way in several key areas. The first one is rapid crisis solutions, and I'll talk about these in slightly more detail in a second, around developing of new supplies, addressing supply chain shortages, and being able to solve specific acute problems. Another one is scaling community development and improvement projects in terms of taking regional initiatives and trying to put them together across different communities around the country. And the third one is developing new standards and specifications for how existing systems and processes work that we've seen have been problematic, throughout this crisis. So in terms of the rapid crisis solutions, a lot of, as I mentioned, what we've been doing has been focusing on COVID-related issues. And here are some examples of things that have come out of the community and then have gone on as spin-off projects to deploy in various different places. So MASS project, these were initial stamped face shields and respirators that got developed very, very quickly, just as COVID was hitting. It addressed a very acute need, and over 1 million face shields got produced, got deployed, and donated to a lot of regional areas, I think in Maryland as well, and perhaps even in Baltimore. I think that there were some donations done for some of these early designs. The Bristol Vent is interesting because rather than making something very complicated, basically teams within our community designed something that's simple, low cost, with readily available parts that can really be manufactured locally, specifically targeted toward the developing world, where they can put together components that they have to address the need for this equipment. On a side note to that, we're actually working for creating something similar for oxygen concentrators for the Indian crisis that's happening right now, where we create reference designs of readily available parts that are accessible locally, and then working with manufacturing partners on the ground to be able to take those reference designs and very quickly create basic oxygen concentrators based on what they have available. So it removes a lot of the barriers of complex systems, import, export, and those kind of things that have been plaguing the problems on the ground there currently. Maker Mask designs that people can go to download. U-Visor is a UV filtration device that, as tested by Sandia National Labs, who's been a partner of ours for this, basically filters out 99% of pathogens around COVID. So this is interesting in terms of manufacturing environments as people get back to work, office environments, to be able to have some protection across people in collaborative settings. Reach for Help was a non-device focused thing. It was basically a website and an app that allowed people to connect very rapidly with folks who could help them, volunteers, across getting supplies to them, as they were trying to recover from illnesses and things like that. So these are some of the multitude of projects that have been and continue to get developed and come out of the community around the COVID problem. A lot of them, again, in teams that have been in rapid execution mode. In terms of scaling community improvements, so we've been working on efforts. I'm based in New York City, and we've been working on efforts within the New York community to help up-and-coming communities, both in New York, but also now transcending regions. In fact, we're talking to organizations in Baltimore as well, to help them with bringing scale and strength to some of their initiatives. And specifically, we've been looking at the areas of healthcare and broadband. So in New York, we're working with federally qualified health centers, FQHCs, to help them, first of all, launch vaccination programs across communities here to get the populations of those communities vaccinated. And in addition to that, working with them on general technology infrastructure, as well as better help in efficiency of running their organizations. We're also looking at broadband and establishing broadband to some of these communities that have poor access to the internet. It's part of Biden's new infrastructure plan as well, to get broadband more widely available, which has been a huge problem, as you may know, not just across New York, but across many communities, including many in Baltimore. So we've started working on mesh network initiatives here in New York, and actually looking at those in Baltimore as well, in terms of expanding internet access to communities. And then we're looking at other areas of need where this model could apply. But essentially, the goal is to create cooperatives and associations that allow these individual initiatives within the regions to be able to work together for things such as group purchasing, and allowing for more volumes, therefore reducing prices of equipment and supply, sharing resources, ability to have expertise be shared amongst communities, as opposed to everyone having to build up their own. Technology development, if there's a system that can be used in one incarnation, it can also be used for others as well. Best practices, and also government initiatives. A lot of these community-based initiatives are focused on getting government grants, whether they be local, regional, or national, and our ability to jointly go after those grants. First of all, we can take best practices on how to approach government entities, but also allows us to have more strength, especially on the federal level, when we approach them for specific things. So looking at organizing these cooperatives, and again, being in our kind of non-aligned position, allowing us to kind of shepherd some of those initiatives and make sure everyone benefits across these community building areas. And finally, a case study about new standards development. So, as we spoke earlier, a lot of supply chains broke down within the context of COVID, and specifically, some supply chains got overloaded in terms of, there's a lot of equipment and supplies coming from overseas. Those became hard to access, and basically had just way too much demand on them. Yet there was a lot of national, for example, manufacturing capacity that was sitting vacant and not really being utilized properly. And so you had this complete disbalance of what was happening in the market, and also exposed our dependency on a lot of foreign-based supply, as we know has been the case. So we started working with the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which is part of the U.S. Department of Commerce, to create a specification for more robust routing of supplies and procurement systems that we've been working with them on for the last several months. And we have an initial prototype already developed, and now we're looking at expanding that further, both in terms of the robustness of what the supply chain specification does, in terms of how we route orders, how we have trusted networks across a variety of entities, but then also starting to involve other government agencies as well as industry partners for looking at this and how this can be rolled out further. So those are some of the key areas that we've been working on so far in the organization. Now, in terms of what our key assets are that really allow us to put this together. So this is, as you see, this is a complex system, and we need a lot of components to come together properly to make this work. First and foremost, we need prominent relationships with external entities. So whether those be, governmental entities, community entities, university, government, industry, we need our relationship with them is what drives the community first, in terms of them telling us about what sustainability challenges they're working on or they need addressed, and also allowing the community to kind of focus on having those channels to deploy. And it also builds for us the brand and credibility of having those relationships that we're working on, and it really allows us to function on a scalable way. The second one is, vital to us is obviously our contributor and expert community. So the more that we have the ability to attract the contributors and volunteers to our community expertise, the more we can succeed in our mission of that economies of scale around sustainability and addressing those challenges in a rapid way. Project pipeline. So we want to be able to have contributors come to the community and have a variety of things that the community can offer them to work on. So Projects can come from a lot of different channels, whether it's a contributor saying, hey, I have an idea for something, but oftentimes where we see projects coming in is that through these relationships, we have a list of defined needs that are acute problems that entities are trying to address, and the contributor community can come in and step up and help them address it. Processes and framework, as we talked about, we need to be able to shepherd those projects from idea stage through prototype development and then onward into the realization process. We also apply our brand and quality standards so that people know that what comes out of our community is something that's reliable, within the global ecosystem, and creating that sense of community and organization. And then finally, go-to-market assistance is critical, whether this comes from external entities or something that we help organize, capital partnerships, joint ventures, manufacturing, deployment support, really about allowing the ideas to go to fruition. In terms of the types of partnership entities that we can benefit, it's a variety of different types of organizations. And again, I've listed a few of them, whether they're government agencies, academic and research labs, population focus groups, whether it's the UN, NGOs, various industry sectors, individual corporations, community, and funding groups. All of these can benefit from working with helpful and working with the resources of the community to help solve various different issues that they may be dealing with and create paths to realization for them. In terms of some of the current relationships that we have, here are some of the entities that we've been working with in some capacity. I mentioned NIST, Hopkins, Get Us PPE, Sandia National Labs, various groups at Harvard, MIT, Field Ready, Engineers Without Borders, and Open Source Medical Solutions. And, as I mentioned, in all these cases, they create the demand signal of challenges that we want to solve, but then we also have natural paths for allowing us to take what was developed in the community and put it to good use out in the world. In terms of contributors, we see four main contributor types that come to the community. The first one is innovators, those who have their own ideas that they want to develop. The second one is somebody who says, I'm an expert in XYZ area. I have some spare capacity, but I want to do some good in the world. But I want to join a project. I don't have time to lead a project because I'm doing other things. So they can try to come in as a teammate and help contribute to individual initiatives. The third one is experts, where somebody is basically can vet an idea, somebody can add some critical guidance because they have expertise in a particular a specific niche that can help an existing team either finalize a design or validate a design. And then you have crisis on-call experts. So, for example, within the COVID crisis, there's a particular regional crisis. People can step up in those particular situations to help either contribute or deploy projects very quickly. So those are the types of contributors that we have as part of the community. And one of the goals that we want to make sure we achieve is when a contributor joins, that it's a very frictionless, seamless process for them to become part of our community and be able to start working on a project as soon as possible. So, allow them to onboard, get their user profile, understand what they want to do, what they're good at, and then match them easily, whether it's by their own choice or however they want to match with projects, and be able to immediately start contributing to the project based on the flexibility around their schedule. If they can only contribute on Tuesday at midnight, to 2 a.m., allow them to do that. If they want to be more involved as a core team member, allow them to do that. So having flexible models allows us to attract a lot more talent who don't see it as a all or nothing, 0 or 1 kind of scenario of being able to help and support the community. In terms of contributors and why they join a community like ours, there's a variety of different reasons. One is obviously they want to make an impact and solve a problem. Another one is they want some personal growth initiative from it, whether they're in between things or transitioning. They want to be able to learn things, have on-the-job experience around particular areas that they might be interested in, have the ability to network with others. And some people want to look at this as a mechanism to start or spin off their own entity. And so this is a perfect way to do that because we allow through our channels the ability to take projects if they're successful and have the teams benefit from that, and also build personal credibility. For projects as well, it creates that network effect, which allows projects to get on the ground, validated or shot down very quickly, and allow them to iterate in a very quick fashion based on the resources, community, and expertise that we offer them. In terms of project sourcing, so a lot of the sourcing for the helpful community in terms of what challenges and needs are needed out there to be worked on, there are several ways that we can create that database of projects of sustainability challenges that the community can address. The first one is one we talked about, which is around prominent relationships, where organizations around the world give us their challenges and we help them address those challenges. We also organize various events, hackathons, and conferences where we have specific themes that then get addressed within the community, and then ideas spin off of that. There's been quite a few ideas that have spun off based on these kind of structures we've had. Individual innovators come to the community and say, I have an idea, I want to assemble a team to develop this idea. That also happens. And also people can work off of previous projects where we have this collective database of these open designs that were done that people can build on top of and create kind of new or iterative projects from that. So we want to create this large database of project sourcing that, again, attracts the community of contributors to basically say what challenges are needed that I can help address. In terms of process and operational support, there's many components to this. Obviously, it's a very complex system that requires a lot of different things. And here's some of the different operational elements that we're building up in terms of making sure that our community functions properly, whether it's around project oversight, around the knowledge base, around community metrics, organizational areas. We need all of these things. One area that I do want to highlight is security, safety, and quality. We want to make sure that we have the proper frameworks around that. Everything that gets coming out of the community and gets deployed to market has vetting, has either regulatory oversight, has the ability to meet standards such as FDA standards and things like that. That's very important because we want to make sure that people can rely on our solutions, especially in things like the medical space. And so we're working through a lot of those areas to make sure that we are that trusted network that people rely on in terms of innovation coming out. We also, as mentioned, we're an open community, and so reference designs coming out of the community are subject to our open source license. And so we're working through aspects of it, but we want to make sure we balance the open designs with the incentive for teams, downstream entities to commercialize or deploy. And we're trying to strike the right balance because we, as I mentioned, don't want to be closed source. At the same time, we want people to develop either derivative works or processes and allow them to do that. So working through some of the nuances there, but really this license is for us to be able to protect our community from any encroachment in terms of the ethos and spirit of it, as well as making sure we recognize the contributors and what they've brought to the community. And so the license allows any entity to use those reference designs coming out of the community, but we want to make sure we properly kind of isolate them and give credit and understand how those are being used downstream. The license allows for companies to develop derivative works downstream, as I mentioned. And where that's important is the concept of local manufacturing, specific incarnations, either regionally or based on a particular entity's needs, for them to allow to take a general design or general concept and tailor it to their specific needs. And this allows for some of the rapid deployment mechanisms that I mentioned. The other thing is about attribution and branding. So, we have quality standards and validation. We want downstream commercialized or deployed projects to be able to have helpful stamp of approval that, hey, yes, we endorse this in terms of the standards that it meets, coming out of the community. And we also want to make sure that the contributors to those projects get proper attribution for any projects that go and become successful. In terms of the brand, so we want to develop a strong brand with Helpful to really stand for that strong collaborative global community that allows for a lot of these things to happen. We want to have very strict, high quality standards for these engineered solutions, and the brand to really provide that credibility. So as such, we have a trademark that is around the Helpful brand that we want to license for things that meet these criteria. In terms of branding, we have a website, and we're also having a social media presence. We're going to continue to build that to drive more awareness across communities around what Helpful does and how Helpful can help them achieve their needs. In terms of the organization itself, we have ethos and guidelines that we want to make sure the contributors who come in know that it is a trusted community. And so as such, we have concepts and values that we want to make sure get adhered to as part of the community, namely openness, namely that we're all going toward a sense of higher purpose. This is a community of innovators. We collaborate with each other across teams. This is not a competitive environment. We have accountability and responsibility for things that get produced, and we want to make sure that the community adheres to a standard of excellence. So we want to instill these values to all contributors who come to the community and make sure that they are operating in an environment of trust, openness, and really collaboration. And that's really the way we see this thing going in terms of making sure that it's successful and making sure we are operating in the most effective way, and everybody can really leverage each other's strengths across that large community that we're building. Finally, just wanted to mention that we really want to make this and build this up to be that global kind of at-scale community. So in terms of our organizational goals, we're not at these numbers yet, but we want to make sure that in a few years we are crossing the 100,000 mark in terms of the number of contributors that are part of our community. We have many projects that get spun out across a lot of verticals, and a lot of those will depend on strategic relationships that we build up. So these are our goals right now in terms of how we build this up, and we're looking to get there over the next several years as we create that at-scale environment for innovation and really look at sustainability and addressing sustainability challenges around the world. So that's the presentation, and be part of the solution. We'd love for you guys to be involved in any capacity that you like. So please feel free to reach out to me, and we can talk about various different things that might be of interest to you, either as contributors to projects, or we also have a large group of folks who are actually driving the organizational piece of it. We have actually over 100 people right now in various different operationally focused roles across making the organization function, which is a great testament to how people believe in us. It's all volunteer at this point, and so people really we're very thankful to the community for being part of us and really helping the mission and the organization grow. So wanted to leave there, see if anybody has any questions or thoughts that they wanted to share.
Hi, Andy. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I am building a tech studio or an accelerator for autism technologies. I've been a serial entrepreneur, built many organizations in the past. So I want to understand, I'm just starting the whole process and also building a fund to invest in startups and entrepreneurs who can build solutions which can improve the quality of life for people on the autism spectrum, and basically mental health, wellness, as well as, the things which we are looking at post-COVID. This issue about the neurodiversity has really, there. And, we need more solutions to improve the quality of life for people on the spectrum, as well as, neurodiverse folks. So how can your organization help me build this ecosystem?
Sure. And first of all, I think it's a very noble endeavor that you're on. So definitely, congratulations on that, and hopefully you see a lot of growth there. So the way that I see this is, autism spectrum issues have not been something that we've been involved in so far. That said, because we are this global network of expertise, what we can do is we can say, okay, we are looking at challenges across this particular area. And so we can, for example, push that out to the community And oftentimes what we see is somebody raises their hand and says, hey, you know what, I'm an expert in this, or they bring in somebody else who might be an expert in that, or who wants to contribute to that. And so there could be a team or multiple teams that get formed around specific challenges for those particular areas. What I find, what we found is probably the most effective is, instead of looking at a broad concept, for example, as you're saying, obviously your goal in general is, well, helping people on the autism spectrum lead better lives. So if there is specific, for example, either projects or challenges that you're looking at to solve, those could be interesting as individual items to look at and push out to the community, because those are very tangible, tactical solutions. So I would say the most effective way is, for example, if you have some specific things, whatever it is, whether it's accessibility, whether it's anything else for that community that you're looking at, maybe create a list of items or challenges, if you will, that you'd like to have either collaboration on or kind of push out to the community, and then we can push out those specific ideas. So I think tangible kind of
yeah, that's great. We have many problem statements which we can discuss, but I would like to connect with you. I'm in Princeton, New Jersey, not far from where you are. And
perfect.
Love to stay in touch with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Please feel free to reach out. I would love to connect with you and see what we can do. I think that
Thank you.
We can look at some things together. Yeah. Perfect. Anybody else?
Hey, Andy. I'm really curious about the UV visor that you guys developed. How did you solve the problem of UV light on people's faces and eyes?
So I'll caveat that with I'm not on that project team specifically, so I know kind of high level around that project, and so I don't know the specifics there. The way that it works is, I think there's multiple filters there. I think that there's probably some shielding that happens over the eyes. It's a good question. I can find out the specific answer to that. I know they have solved that problem, obviously. But I know the device, just in general, has that front shield. The light is coming out from the top, and then there's, I think, a mechanism with a battery and I think a fan that gets put, I think it attaches to the back. But on that specific question about how they prevent it from getting into the eyes, obviously they solved that problem. I don't know the specific answer to that. So if you'd like, I can find that out and get back to you.
Sure, I'd love that. One of the things, and I love the idea of a rapid group from across the globe working on problems, but I do wonder if there's, problems with developing something that's too fast and that you haven't really solved some of the health problems that it might entail. How do you deal with that issue?
So what we're looking at doing, and that's a very good question, is, it depends on the complexity of the particular item getting released, right? So for example, things that are basically PPE and various different, types of masks and mask elements, obviously those can be released in a much more rapid way. In terms of actual devices, so, for example, what we're doing for, with India right now and trying to work through is, you have that rapid ability. I mean, people can create oxygen concentrators out of buckets, Coke bottles, and various other supplies, but obviously those aren't reliable. The thing is that what we're trying to marry is a set of standards against which we create those rapid solutions. So we're still in process of working through how exactly that incarnation is going to work, but essentially we want to say, okay, here's, for example, criteria that the FDA looks at for analysis of whether a solution meets its standards or not. There's either human trials that they need, there's some kind of reliability of the parts and things like that. So while nobody right now in India cares about FDA approval, they just want something that works. We want to be able to say, okay, we have these kind of low cost or simple or rapid designs, but then we need to make sure that they marry against some kind of quality standards and be tested at least in some kind of format that makes them work. And so there's that balance of saying, well, what do we rapidly release, but what do we rapidly release, but at least we know that it has some validation to it, and we believe in that second concept. So even though it might slow things down slightly, we're hoping that we make that trust component of it based on whatever standards that we need to validate against be a very rapid process as well. And I think we can get there. I mean, a lot of these things, they don't require, you know, it's not like a drug trial, for example. We're not developing, you know, drugs or anything like that. So it's not like you need extensive testing. You just need some basic validation that, you know, the thing's not going to blow up or the thing's, you know, does what it says it does. So I think it's just a matter of practically understanding how we can quickly do that validation across specific standards for equipment. So
I'll go. Sure.
What are you going to do for
does that make sense?
the Featherstones?
Thank you.
I was going to send them something to, who was I going to go to? I'm going to introduce her to.
I think we have some background noise coming in.
You and I had our talk.
Oh, okay. You need any of these?
Any other questions or comments or thoughts?
This
Like
is
keep them or
saved.
throw them out? No. This is save, this is throw.
I would throw them out. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for joining. Appreciate your participation. Feel free to reach out, and you know, I'll connect with some of the questions that were raised regarding some of those answers and engagement. And please feel free to check us out. Please feel free to join us.